Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, as reverberations are still being felt from those attacks on women in the German city of Cologne, we take a look at how Norway is offering lessons to migrants on gender equality. Also, I'll be talking to Paris-based journalist Ingrid Therwath on whether the media coverage of the issue has indeed been productive, and how the women of an Ecuadorian tribe convinced their men to quit hunting. But first, the fallout from those New Year's Eve attacks on women in the German town of Cologne continues. It's now sparked a furious debate on Europe's stance on integrating migrants and refugees. We take a look at a novel approach in Norway on bridging cultural differences over the treatment of women.
It was a New Year's Eve like no other. As the firecrackers went off, hundreds of women were molested, threatened and robbed. Unable to control the crowds, the police eventually evacuated the square in downtown Cologne. Over 500 criminal complaints were lodged, 40% alleging sexual assault.
They felt like they had all the power and they could do anything with the women that were out partying. They touched us everywhere. It was horrible.
The Interior Minister for the local state said most of those responsible were of North African and Arab origin. Some, he said, were asylum seekers who had arrived in the past year. As Europe faces its biggest migrant crisis since World War II, politicians and the public are grappling with cultural differences on sex and gender. Between 2009 and 2011, a series of rapes traced to asylum seekers took place here in the Norwegian town Stavanger. That prompted the refugee housing organisation Hero to try a novel idea. It started gender code classes for asylum seekers and encouraged them to protect women against sexual assault.
Well, they come from cultures where the dress code is quite different, where also the behavior around sexual norms is very different. We actively encourage them and we train them to stop those situations from escalating. And that is a complete different approach than actually patronizing, just telling them how things work in Norway.
These asylum seekers took part in Hero's programme.
In my home country, women just sit at home, cook and clean the house and stuff like that. They only work at home. It's up to men to make decisions for women. That was what I thought when I first came to Norway, but now I agree with this system of men and women standing together.
The Norwegian government has expressed interest, but for now does not fund Hero's programme directly. So far, 1,000 asylum seekers have taken part.
Claire Williams with that report. Now, those attacks on women in Cologne on New Year's Eve and the ensuing consequences continue to make headlines across the world. I'm joined now in the studio by Ingrid Ter, a journalist with Courrier International, a French weekly that focuses on international affairs. Ingrid, thanks so much for being with us. Now, we're going to talk about some of the stories appearing in this week's publication, but first, as we saw in that report, this story has very much shone a spotlight, if you like, on the dark side, the problematic side of Europe's refugee and migrant crisis, namely the issue when it comes to cultural differences in the treatment of women.
It makes everybody quite uneasy. And the first thing I'd like to stress about this Cologne story is that we don't really have a lot of facts. So everybody's throwing conjectures about why this happened, linking it to the refugee crisis, linking it to differences in terms of values, in terms of women's rights and women's places in society. But the thing is, the police, the local police and the local authorities haven't given us a lot of facts. So what we have at the moment are a lot of conjectures. Some of them are really nasty, actually.
Yes, and this is where some feminist groups have accused the far right of hijacking the agenda, and instead of becoming an issue about sexism, it's now become an issue effectively about racism, hasn't it?
Completely. Actually, one thing that happened on Twitter, on the social media, is a hashtag, ausnahmslos, which means without exception in German. And a group of feminists launched this hashtag to say that all types of discriminations have to be fought. Sexism, machism, and also racism, because now the fear is that all the refugees and all migrants in Germany and all non-white people in Germany are going to face the brunt of the extreme right and prejudice.
So do you think the media has been productive in the way in which they've covered this issue?
Productive, I'm not sure that's the right term. And of course, that's why you're asking me the question. The first thing is that the media, the national media rather, because the local media reported the incidents immediately. But the German national media waited for an astonishingly long period before actually reporting the facts or whatever facts we have. I think the first articles appeared on the third evening or the fourth morning, and the incidents happened on the 31st of December. So that's an awfully long period. And this gap in information, this blackout, is probably due to the fact that not only do we not have all the info, but it's also making a lot of journalists a bit queasy.
Ingrid, moving on, and also in this week's edition, your paper has published a stunning video by a Syrian artist now living in Turkey about how life has become especially difficult in the city of Raqqa, which of course is the stronghold of the Islamic State group. Let's take a look. And that video was produced by Syrian filmmaker Amer Albarzawi. In just 1 minute, it just says it all, doesn't it?
That's the point. And the point also is to keep the people aware that a war is happening not very far away from us. This video was made by a couple, actually. It's his wife,
isn't it?
And they both now live in exile in Turkey. And this video has gone viral. It was released in November. It was picked up by the British and the American media. And when we saw it, we decided to pick it up as well. And now it's becoming viral in France, which is really good because that's the point of these videos. They are made to shock and maybe lead to action.
Ingrid Therwath from Courrier International. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, in South America, life for Amazonian tribes are changing as a growing number swap hunting for farming. It's part of a move by local authorities to save the jungle's fragile environment. But for one Ecuadorian tribe in particular, it was the women who successfully convinced men to hang up their spears and instead farm cocoa.
The Guarani tribe live deep in Ecuador's Amazonian rainforest. Traditionally hunters, in recent years the tribe has seen stocks of game in the region greatly depleted. To make up the shortfall in revenues, Guarani women have switched their focus to cultivating one of Ecuador's main cash crops. Since 2010, an indigenous women's group has donated cocoa trees to wives if their husbands give up hunting. The group buys their crops for a sum above the market price, then sells it to be made into organic chocolate.
As they say, I'm happy because if the Women's Association hadn't helped me with the cocoa, how could I have lived like before? Killing animals that were disappearing? People didn't know how to live. Then we started changing.
10 indigenous communities have joined the project to save the nature they worship and depend on. For the Guarani, alarm bells went off when they realised that the game they were hunting was increasingly hard to find.
There used to be lots to hunt, like peccari, wild boar, monkey, spider monkey, brown woolly monkey, turkey, wild chicken, toucan and deer.
The experience is empowering the tribe's women, who now provide for their families.
Sometimes they were shy when the men were there. Then some of the men would talk, saying women didn't know anything. But women know how to look after children, to raise families. So yes, we can do things.
They may have given up the thrill of the hunt, but with their chocolate, the Waorani tribe could make a rather sweet difference to their ecosystem.
And finally, an extraordinary feat. British aviator Tracy Curtis-Taylor has successfully completed an epic 27,000-kilometre solo flight from Britain to Australia in a vintage plane. The 53-year-old took off from the UK in October. She retraced pioneer Amy Johnson's 1930 flight, flying over some 23 countries before arriving in Sydney, Australia on January 9th. And unlike her predecessor, Curtis-Taylor was forced to fly around war zones in the Middle East, and all of this by flying strictly by sight, even when flying into bad weather. And that's it for now, and if you'd like to comment on what you've just seen, you can head to our Facebook page. That's France 24 51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far, and please do keep those comments coming in. Until our next show, bye for now.